the expectation was so high. Man City were on this amazing run, and then all of a sudden, Arsenal bring them crashing back down to earth. I mean, Rach, what was your kind of initial take on this?
I'm glad it delivered, and I feel like it did. I feel like it delivered in terms of it being a tactical battle. You know, there was two of the best pressing teams in the league. I think I was really excited to see that midfield go up against each other. And again, tactically, I think Renée got it spot on. And what it kind of reminds me of, I can imagine Arsenal fans being like, you know, this is incredible, like, beat Chelsea, beat Man City, and still fourth, you know, and you're a bit like, why didn't you do that at the beginning of the season? And it reminds me of when I watch Ireland play rugby, and we come along and we beat the All Blacks in these friendlies, and it's the most amazing thing. And I'm like, yeah, but do it when it matters. Do it in a quarterfinal of a World Cup, because you can never get past the quarterfinal of the World Cup. So yeah, I just thought it's a bit like incredible performances, tactically great, players playing well. And you're like, why didn't you do that like 3 months ago? It could have been a very different story. But no, it delivered, a bit like the Chelsea-Arsenal game, a really enjoyable watch for the neutral, where you just got to enjoy top quality players, tactics, a proper battle out there, a bit of a chess match. And yeah, maybe some more goals would have been nice, but maybe I'm just being greedy.
I think it was that, and also because the first game came so early, you kind of I thought that was going to initiate kind of a bit of a flurry of back and forth. I really thought this was going to be a kind of Arsenal score, then Man City equalised, then Arsenal score again, and Man City equalised, and then it just sort of, well, it didn't die a death, the game itself. Like, there was a lot going on. There was a lot of transitions, a lot of drama, but it was that initial goal that obviously kicked off proceedings. You have this beautiful Mariona Caldentey, incredible through ball from just inside her own half, and then Olivia Smith kind of latching onto that, and then sort of rounding the keeper and slotting the ball into the back of the net.
I think City they haven't shown an awful lot of weakness this season. They've been unbelievable up front. You know, we talk a lot about their front players and their midfield, etc. I do think they're a backline that can be got at, and I think the likes of London City showed that when they played them in the previous 2 weeks ago. You know, so I think Arsenal recognised where they could capitalise. I think they flooded the midfield. They made it really tight and compact. They were so tight, touch tight on players. Miedema was given very little space to operate. I thought Lotte Wubben-Moy was like a sticking plaster to Bunny Shaw. She would not give her any time on the ball. I thought the defence generally played really, really well. And the fact that they were playing Olivia Smith in the 9, like when Sophie messaged me and was like, Olivia Smith in the 9, and I was like, what?
Bit of a surprise.
Yeah, so Blackstenius had picked up a knock, I think, on her calf. And again, it was quite a brave decision, much like when Blackstenius and Russo played together against Chelsea. You're like, right, what happens if this plan doesn't work and you've not really got much else on the bench, right? It was a similar kind of situation where they kind of rolled the dice and went for it early on. So the fact they then got the early goal not only validated that decision, I guess, but then gave the team the confidence in the game plan, in that, okay, this is how we're gonna do it. We're gonna be able to. And what I loved about the goal, which was very un-Arsenal-like, was back to front in mere seconds. Right, it was none of this 100 passes around the box, tippy-tappy, going backwards, recycling, try again, send it in, give it back. Like straight to Mariona, Mariona up to Smith, goal. That's it. And it's like, that's what Arsenal need to do more of. And it does help playing against a team where we're going to be a bit more open and expansive against you. But still, it was quite an effective style.
Well, didn't you think, I mean, you mentioned there sort of how much kind of Arsenal wanted to play through that middle, and I think Olivia Smith was very integral in that. I think one of the things that I really liked tactically from Renée was how she looked at sort of Man City's backline. Obviously, really, really amazing backline. You can't take the talent out of them, but at the same time, the pace that Olivia Smith, I think I knew that was going to be an advantage that she had over some of the backline in Man City, and I think that goal in particular kind of was a good example of that. You know, Rebecca Kanak, like, she was absolutely going full pelt, but at the same time, it just felt like that it was a bit redundant because Olivia Smith just had the pace on her to kind of like put the burners on and just kind of break away. So yeah, I think that was also a really good tactic there to kind of try something different, and especially in a game of this gravity where it meant so much to Arsenal. So yeah, really rated that too. And then you've got Viv Miedema almost scoring after just 11 seconds, had the ball in the back of the net in the second half too. They had kind of one shot on target. I wouldn't say that there was that the Arsenal were being tested. I think they were good when they had good chances, they were good, but I don't think there was a lot of them.
Yes, and I think a lot of that was down to Arsenal being very defensively switched on. I think Man City struggled really to penetrate Arsenal's box. I think that's where, they get forward and then it was kind of flooded. I think players were, you'd kind of pack midfield going forward sometimes, or even when City were coming forward, you'd have sometimes a player would invert and they'd be going direct, and it just feel really kind of narrow and packed for City to kind of find that space to operate in. And as I said, players being touch tight to any of the attackers when they were in the box. So the fact that they were able to minimise their creativity so much was quite impressive, because that is something that Manchester City have been very good at. They've been very good at creating a lot of chances. So yeah, the fact that was a big win, I suppose, for Arsenal. And I do think the early goal boosted the confidence in what they were doing, and that what they were doing was right. I think if Miedema had scored that one in 11 seconds or something, that was such a statement, like, we are here, watch out. But yeah, could have been a very different story for sure.
100%. And then it kind of looks like, one of the opportunities that Man City did have was Lauren Hemp, who kind of felt like she was kind of through on goal, and then Mariona Caldentey tripping her up just outside the box, probably about a foot, maybe half a foot outside the box. Lauren Hemp obviously visibly upset and frustrated by the referee's decision. I think everyone can agree it was definitely a card, and it was definitely a free kick. And I think especially a free kick in such a dangerous area, you don't know what Man City could have done with that. And I think it's decisions like that that really kind of change the game, because it's always those what ifs, and that was such a pivotal moment. Rachel, what were you thinking when that happened?
They absolutely got away with one there, and it wasn't just any old card. I think that was a red card. I think Caldentey denied a goal scoring opportunity. Yes, there were other defenders along the line, but none in front of her that realistically could have gotten to. And Hemp would have hit that box and fired, like, no questions. So it wasn't a guaranteed goal if that had happened the way it should have and Caldentey was sent off, but it absolutely would have been a free kick in a dangerous area and Arsenal down to 10. So yeah, got away with one there. They can be frustrated about that. I quite like how Jeglert's handled it in the post-match media. He wasn't angry. He did, many managers would have been absolutely, don't know how they missed that, really annoyed, could have changed the game. And he was like, haven't seen it, haven't watched it back properly yet. These things happen. It's frustrating. I'm surprised, but I thought Arsenal played really well, blah, blah, blah. And he kind of recognised that wasn't the reason they won the game, which I quite liked.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, there was another really good chance just towards the end with Miedema sort of going through a goal. It felt very scrappy. She was trying to get through. There were legs sort of everywhere. You didn't know if a penalty was going to be given. Then Leah Williamson kind of flies out of nowhere and kind of saves the day. So yeah, there were a couple of good chances from City, but I do think they were relatively rare. I think talking of kind of going back to Arsenal, I think even though they got this win, and obviously it's a really important win for them, at the same time, I can't help but kind of notice, if I'm going to be critical in any way, that even though they won the game, there were so many chances that they could have put the game to bed. I think, the Katie McCabe, the long range effort, you had the Alessia Russo toe poke, and I just kind of felt like there were moments that they could have maybe
had chances.
Caitlin Ford, who looked absolutely incredible. Last few games, I've been super, super impressed with her. But yeah, there were chances there that I think Arsenal could have alleviated that pressure a little bit more. It still felt like we're still seeing parts of the old Arsenal, in that they're sort of creating these chances, but not actually converting them.
I think you can look at both teams and say that there were issues. I still think it was a very high quality, enjoyable game. I don't think, no team is infallible. Manchester City have shown that. They can play some unbelievable football, but you need things to be right in the day. You need players to be everything going right in the day for it to work. And so there are going to be issues that Arsenal are still going to have. Manchester City could have exploited them. And I think, we have a good question here from one of our listeners. What can we put Manchester City's toothlessness down to? Arsenal were solid, but it was also a rare off day for Bunny Shaw. Sometimes it's a combination of things. I think tactically Arsenal got it right. And you can have players not quite on their game. Some of that can be not having their best day. And some of it can be the opposition has kind of forced you into this uncomfortable situation where you feel more under pressure. You've got less time on the ball, and that can then make you look like you're having an off day, when it could also be down to the fact that maybe you're just being defended really well, or maybe they're double teaming on you and you're not having the same impact that you would like to have. And then when those few chances do come through, your misses are much more glaring because there's been so few. opportunities, and suddenly all you're seeing are misses, if that makes sense, as opposed to, say, Bunny Shaw maybe having a game where she has 7 shots and she scores 2. Unbelievable. But if she's in a game where she's only had 3 and she misses all 3, suddenly that looks worse, do you know what I mean, than the 5 misses in the previous game. So it could be a combination, I think. You'll know as a player, it can be a combination of some off days, but also the other team's tactics just work.
Yeah, mate, I've 100% got to agree with you on that. And I think obviously it depends on what your teammates are doing and how they're playing, because like, if you're not getting the balls in the first place, you're not able to have that time to kind of develop and kind of grow into the game somewhat. So I think, and Bunny Shaw, I think maybe towards the start of the season, we kind of saw a couple of games where she wasn't hitting firing form. And then literally since then, since October, she's been absolutely on it. And I think there is a kind of expectation, I think that players, once they reach this kind of level, kind of will just operate on exactly the same level every single week in, week out, and other factors won't come into it. And it defies belief that you can possibly turn up to work every single day and deliver exactly the same incredible performances week in, week out.
We underestimate all the things that need to go right for a good performance, because when all things are going
100%.
right, you're just thinking, wow, that's unbelievable. She's unbelievable. And she is. But you have to factor in that she needs to be on her game. Players around her need to be on their game. Ideally not having a defence who's kind of worked out how to minimise your impact. All of those things need to, and you kind of then underappreciate how good it is when they're on such flying form, because you're like, wow, so many things are clicking. It's so impressive. So yeah, I like you said, I wouldn't read hugely into it.
Well, talking of things that were clicking, we've got a really good question in from Tina Nutt on X/Twitter. She said, has the renaissance double pivot of Kim and Mariona made them both better players? And then we also had a lovely kind of sub-comment in from that with Han Solo saying, surely it's the Renée formation.
This was after me wondering what period came after the Renaissance. Yeah, I don't know, Han Solo. We've had a chat about that. I'm not sure we're going to let that fly, but appreciate the input.
It is what it is. So much. Good effort. Yeah, good effort.
On that double pivot, listen, if you asked Arsenal fans 2 months ago if they're enjoying that double pivot and seeing Mariona deeper in the team, they would say absolutely not. So I know things have gone well for them the last couple of games, but Mariona is a much more effective player when she's playing higher up the pitch. So I wouldn't hang my hat entirely on that. I think it worked really well against City, and I think it worked well against Chelsea. But I do think she is a much more effective player in that higher up role. Kim Little is a wonder. She needs to be studied. 399 appearances for Arsenal, which is insane.
Silly. And she absolutely. Would you even give a player who has got 400 appearances for a club? Like, what are Arsenal going to do? Like,
chair,
gift her a stand?
Have a seat,
like,
take a rest. But to see her operate at that level still, and in the biggest games against a Chelsea, against a Manchester City, is incredible. I think, we all were sad when she retired from Scotland. We thought she had more in her for Scotland, but actually I think that's done her the world of good. It gives her more time for recovery. They always, managers and players talk about how professional she is, and not only the way she turns up to work, but how she looks after herself off the pitch as well. And that's obviously doing wonders for her, because she has put in some unbelievable performances, and that tackle on Miedema is a prime example of what she's got in her locker still. So maybe Kim has stepped up even more this season. I'm not sure if that's even possible? But I still think Mariona will be more effective higher up, but she's settling into that role, I suppose.
Definitely. I think it's the maturity that both players have, and their ability to read the game is absolutely unmatched. And I think that's what makes them individually incredible players. I think, together having that kind of double pivot, I think there is an understanding that you can see between them both of how they both like to play. And I think there was the freedom and flexibility to do that. But at the same time, I've got to agree with you. I mean, the goal in itself, like the Arsenal scored at the weekend, came from Mariona kind of driving forwards and being more forward and forward thinking. So yeah, for sure. I think it's not outside the realm of possibility. Like, obviously it's not a combination that doesn't work. But yeah, it's that kind of, it's the game management for me that I see them kind of being able to control that kind of almost like the midsection, I suppose. But, so because of this result, Arsenal have come out of the other side of a bonkers month of fixtures, relatively unscathed and in a pretty bloody good shape. There was a defeat obviously to Manchester United in the Subway Cup, but in the last month they've beaten Chelsea and Man City and won the global champion of the world title for themselves.
Did you like the new little gold badge on the front of their shirt, Chloe? Are you going to be getting yourself a new shirt? updated version.
Yeah, maybe I will actually, or maybe I'll wait for some kind of like hospitality box to kind of just have one of those. Yeah,
Can I just say though, you're
Go
saying they've come out the other side of a crazy month. They still have the qualifiers in the Champions League that they need to get through, which is against Leuven, who they did beat. And then if they do get through that, they face Chelsea in the quarterfinals. So there's still, you think you've reached the highest bit of the mountain. You're like, we did it. And then you look up and you're like, God damn it, there's more to go.
Why? That just feels like the whole season for everyone until May. But wishing them all the best at this second massive, huge stage of their season. Coming up after this, Chelsea get a much needed win. Rach, a huge and very, very crucial and very important win for Chelsea this weekend. Madonna was in attendance at the game. Before we even get stuck into what actually happened in the game, Madonna, the actual singer, you know, like the
Beautiful
actual
stranger.
singer, Madonna, like one name, Madonna. So it was a day after her 13-year-old twin, Stella and Astaire, had appeared for Tottenham's under-14 side. I've got to admit, I did know about this prior to this becoming mainstream news. I can't reveal my sources, but I was aware that there was going to be, at some point, a very big revelation coming out of the Spurs camp that they were affiliated to one of the biggest singers on the planet. Obviously, that got a lot of attention. I can see that some of the Academy staff behind, just like there were so many people kind of like every time they panned over to her there was another person asking for a selfie, and I was like, you know what, I've got to rate it.
The amount of news story, like I know some of my colleagues in the media were writing about this game and they all had to be asked, we got to get a Madonna pun, can we put it in the headline, can we make it the thing? And they were like, no, we want to write about the match is what we want to write about. We don't want Chelsea got back into the groove. I don't know how many times I've heard that. So yeah, I think the journalists were a bit frustrated because they were like, we want to write about the match, we don't want to put another Madonna pun in our piece, please leave us alone.
Like, from my editorial head, I'm thinking that is a click, that's a click, that is a click, that kind of headline all day. I'm reading it. But yeah, I mean, obviously it was amazing to have someone of that kind of the gravity of it, her being at the Spurs stadium. I've got to rate it. I should have asked for a selfie with Alexi Putellas when I saw it at the London City game, and it still haunts me now. So I rate the energy that people had just sort of taken that opportunity. Anyway, before kickoff, Spurs were just 1 point behind Chelsea. A remarkable situation given they finished last season 40 points, 40 points apart. Spurs had plenty of shots in the game. 15 in total, just one less than Chelsea, but they just couldn't find the back of the net. This was a super frustrating game for me because Spurs are a team that I have a very love-hate relationship with, but I've got to admit,
love them when they're winning.
Love them when they're winning. Could become one of my fifth teams this year. I don't know. There's that space is still up for grabs. But there were so many situations in the first kind of opening 20, 25 minutes or so where Tottenham took the game to Chelsea. And I really think on balance, Tottenham could have been a couple of goals up. I mean, the Olivia Holt effort, and again, it kind of exposed the weaknesses that we've seen in previous games with Chelsea. Kind of as soon as they're hit on the counter, it feels like Chelsea they've committed so many bodies up. They're kind of leaving a kind of 3v2, 2v2 situations, and teams who are quick to counter can really capitalise on how disorganised Chelsea are looking at the back at the moment.
Passive.
But very passive and kind of just not like they've got their heads all there.
I think Tottenham can be frustrated after that game, which I think says a lot about them, because they can be, sounds weird to say happy to be frustrated, but to come away from that and say, we actually could have got something out of that game.
100%.
Particularly in the first half. I know they had 15 shots, only 4 of them on target will be frustrating. But yeah, I just am so impressed with how that front line and midfield have clicked very quickly together. And I saw flashes of it when they were playing against Leicester and had a number of new players in from the January transfer window. And there were moments where I was kind of like, wow, they're playing some really lovely, quick 1-2 football. Look like they've been playing together for years. That was on display again against Chelsea. And against Chelsea, of all teams, to be doing that. They just, when they counter-attack, they flood forward in a pack, which I think is so impressive. And I imagine quite daunting for a defence who might be running back frantically, looking at 6 players coming at you at speed, zipping the ball around each other. And you could see that in the Olivia Holt chance. Should she have passed? Maybe, but the fact she hit the crossbar, she really wasn't far off the actual chance.
Such a rocket.
Yeah, so I think they'd be really frustrated, particularly about the first half, to not at least have gotten at least a goal. Second half, because of the timings of the goals, just before first, I think 39th minute for Ciara Walsh, and then the 49th maybe for Alyssa Thompson, quite close either side to the half time. They just looked a little bit deflated for a little while, I think, in the second half, but that didn't mean they didn't create. Again, they definitely could have gotten a goal, I think around the 60th minute or so. That would have maybe put the cat amongst the pigeons a little bit, bring it back to 2-1, boosted their confidence. They created more. And yeah, I think there was definitely a step up from Spurs, but equally some of the issues that we've seen with Chelsea were kind of there again. And it's that passivity in defence and kind of dropping off and not engaging players higher up the pitch. And
definitely,
whether it's a fear of losing the ball too high up, I don't know, but it's just not something you're really used to seeing from Chelsea. And factor in, I think I'm right in saying that they're the team that have had the most changes in their starting 11 this season. And I think you kind of see that inconsistency maybe causing some of the problems. You look at Anuskin, who many have called for and asked why is she not getting more game time. Gets the game time, gets player of the match. You've got like a weapon in there of a player. And the fact that someone like that isn't getting in the team regularly does make you wonder why, especially given things have been so inconsistent, I think, with Chelsea. So an interesting game. Chelsea essentially won't care because they got the 3 points. They'll get back to winning ways. It gave them the confidence. They played more, chests out. They looked kind of more confident in the second half, which maybe we haven't seen. So, it was definitely an interesting one.
It was, to me though, it was shaky, and I think it was disappointing on a Chelsea perspective, because we've seen these kind of issues start to creep in over the last 2-3 weeks, and it doesn't feel like Chelsea have really recognised that and are doing anything to kind of adapt that and kind of make sure that, because teams are going to be looking at kind of where the vulnerabilities are with Chelsea and where the weaknesses are, and the back line is becoming one of them. And I don't think that in terms of the player quality there, that's all fine, but in terms of like the organisation, not doing the basics, they're ball watching, they're kind of committing bodies forward, they're not providing cover at the back. I mean, these are all things that you don't expect from a Chelsea, 5-6 time kind of champion winning side. These are like basic level things. So that was super disappointing for me. And I feel like that's something that Chelsea need to rectify very, very quickly. And they got this win, but I don't think that negates the fact that, they still weren't doing those things. I think, I feel disappointed from a Spurs perspective, because it kind of feels like they were doing the right things. They were creating chances. They were just either kind of a little bit off, or they were just a little bit unlucky, and the ball not just being a little bit lower or whatever it was. But then at the same time, you've got like the Ciara Walsh goal, for example. I mean, it came to her. The annoying thing is, it had the whole reason that happened in the first place was because the corner came off the defender in the first place, and you kind of think it was an unprompted error that kind of led to the corner. And then you've got this corner where Spurs do a really good job of clearing it out, but then they aren't picking up someone like Ciara Walsh at the edge of the box, who is as soon as that second phase, as soon as you've cleared the ball and it isn't a proper clearance, it goes to Ciara Walsh. What is she going to do? She's got an absolute strike on her. That from that distance, like that ball is going to go in the back of the net. You've got loads of bodies in front. Keeper can't see a thing. And all the 3 defenders who came out to try and negate that threat of Ciara Walsh doing that strike came out in exactly the same line. So no one was providing any kind of defensive variation. They all came at her pretty much like that. So you're only protecting one path, one route of the ball. And like for me, it kind of feels like Spurs are doing the right things, but they're being unstuck by really silly moments that I think then let themselves down. And I think that is why you start to see that kind of like almost like a little bit of deflation start to creep in, that mentality of, oh God, we've conceded the goal to Chelsea, it's going to be a real battle now.
Particularly given Walsh, I think, was the one who scored when they played each other last time in the reverse leg when they lost 1-0. I agree that, yes, they come down to silly mistakes, but the other side of me thinks there's been so much improvement in Spurs in a short space of time.
Definitely.
Not everything's going to be right.
Yeah,
not everything's going to be right all the time. There's going to be those, inexperienced moments that we see. And a lot of this team are, there are quite young players in this team, or players who've just come in. And, add to that the occasion of playing at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, which was the first time this season. And the first time
Madonna's
for many of these players. Madonna's bloody watching. You need a friggin' prayer if you're going to be coming up against Chelsea. So yes, there are going to be frustrating moments, but I think for me, there's way too many positives, because, that stat that's bouncing around, Spurs' record is 13 defeats from 13 matches played against Chelsea in the WSL, worst run of any one team against another in England's top flight. I hate stats without context, and it's like looking at a team's results and just go, oh, they're shit. And it's like, well, you're not watching the matches. You're not seeing the improvement. You're not seeing the moments of brilliance. You're not seeing the opportunities that an inch either side maybe could have been a goal. And I think that's important when you're looking at how Spurs are playing this season. If they're playing like that against the current champions, and I know Chelsea haven't been at their best, which is fair, and they can come away from a game like that going, do you know what? We actually could have won that. You know, you look at the bloody game against Man United. You know, they were up so much and then they come back and they draw that game. So I think they are moments that relatively new teams with the new manager need to experience in order to learn. It's so cliche, mistakes are the stepping stones to knowledge, but like, you don't mess up, you don't learn. And I think they'll come away from that and go, actually, we could have done this, this and this. If we hadn't done that, we probably could have won that game. And that's so much better than getting spanked 7-0.
So actually, we've got a listener question in from Nikki. Do you think Spurs have a mental block against Chelsea? The first time we ever played against Chelsea was at Stamford Bridge, and it was like a real record game because it was a record attendance, and the sun was out, and it was like the first game that Spurs had ever played in the WSL, and it was against Chelsea. Like that, whoever drew that it was just cruel because we'd only just made it up. And I remember it was 1-0. Becky Spence was in goal, so thankfully I was on the bench. But it was one of those moments that at that point, that game, it was so close. There was so much kind of passion and energy, and there was a real belief in the Spurs camp that we were actually going to do it, that we were actually going to win this game against Chelsea in the opening game. And I think it was one of the first times they'd played at Stamford Bridge at that time. But it kind of feels like there is this kind of like, I don't know, like a Chelsea boogeyman on Spurs' back that they just need to like shake off in a way.
I don't know. No? I think if they were going out, beating Man City, beating Man United, beating Arsenal, and they just couldn't get Chelsea, maybe you could say that. But they're not there yet. You know, they're still struggling against the top teams, and they're getting better against the top teams. So it's not like Man United, who struggled for a long time against Chelsea. They eventually got a win over them in the FA Cup semi-final, and that's still a bit of a block for them, I think. I know they've done it once, but that kind of, you could see being a block because they'd taken scalps before and they'd made it life difficult for top teams and they'd beaten them before. So if Spurs were at that level, then yeah, maybe you could say it's a mental block. But I think until they get there, this is just, they're going to struggle against top teams. And actually, if they're getting better each week, any other day, they could have come away with a draw, if not won that game. So I do think there's improvement, and I wouldn't completely put it down to a mental block. I can certainly say Martin Ho wouldn't feel like there's a mental block against them.
No, I think I don't want to sort of take away any credit from where the team has got to, because I definitely think this is one of the best seasons that I've ever seen Spurs play, and Spurs play consistently. But I do think there is something around, I don't know, maybe I think it's like how all teams feel against, like playing against Chelsea, that I think it's like that kind of like the final boss on a game. It kind of feels like once you've defeated them, like it opens up endless possibilities. I think on a player perspective, if you're really going to think about it, there is something there. You shouldn't feel that way. You shouldn't feel intimidated. You shouldn't feel like, you know, you've got this, any team's kind of got the better over you. But I think there are some teams I've definitely gone into games thinking, yeah, Christ, you feel nervous, you feel scared going into games, whether you like to admit it or not. Talking of some big Chelsea news, they announced on Friday before the game that Sonia Bompastor has signed a new contract or a contract extension until 2030. I love this. I really, really love this. I love a club that gets behind a manager where things aren't going to plan, but they can appreciate what the manager's trying to build, the previous success that the manager has had, their ability to kind of get people together, to create a positive working environment. Like those things can't be unmatched. And I really love the fact that they've kind of put pen to paper and given Sonia Bompastor a little bit of breathing space to kind of really bed in. Like I think we forget sometimes that she's only been here minutes in the scheme of Chelsea and everything that Emma Hayes tried to build. So I think, it was welcome news to me, and I think it was welcome news to fans.
I don't think it was a reaction to the games. I find it hard to believe that they'd have sorted that out after the Arsenal game and the Man City game. I imagine that was something that was already in the pipeline. Oh yeah, 100%, of course. But I've seen some fans say that they think it's like a reaction to, but that's not. They don't just suddenly go, oh shit, here's a contract, we want to show you that we believe in you. I think it's interesting. You know, I know Chelsea love a long contract. They certainly do in the men's game. I think it is a good sign for Sonia to feel like she has the backing of the club. Kind of puts to bed probably a lot of, I wouldn't even say a lot, but some of the kind of calls for her head and nastiness we've seen on social media. And it's been weird because it's like, a lot of the media have been kind of backing up Sonia and saying these things happen, taking over a dynasty is hard, you're going to have bumps in the road, etc., etc. It's not actually for once the media saying, oh, is she in trouble? Should we be blah, blah, blah? And I think even Sonia herself kind of backed herself in the post-match press conference as well. A little bit of turbulence. I think having that kind of confirmed consistency behind the scenes will help. 2030 seems so far away. It's not. But it feels so far away. It feels, I think 2030 is like, we're all going to be flying and, driving flying cars and stuff. And actually it's just 4 years away.
Yeah, don't. The fact that I was born in the 80s actually starts to scare me a little bit now when we talk about the 30s.
Don't say that out loud.
Yeah, that's crazy. More news also from the Chelsea game. So yesterday, Paul Green left his role as Chelsea head of women's football after 13 years. Obviously a massive part of the club's success under Emma Hayes. And I think it did come as a bit of a shock. And I think maybe more so because of the timing of it. Chelsea not doing too well. A lot of people, what I think wrongly calling for Sonia Bompastor's head. It kind of feels like, again, sort of such an integral part of the team also leaving one of the backroom staff who's been a massive part of building the machine that Chelsea is. It just feels like an unusual timing as well, halfway through a season, appearing to kind of come out of nowhere.
Yeah, I'd love to know where he's going next to kind of give us an idea of whether it was kind of always in the pipeline or whether it's a sign of something more.
Is it a USA play? Is it an Emma Hayes giving Paul a ring saying, look, we've got a really important competition coming up in 2027. You did a great job at Chelsea. I think you could do something special here. We've already got an Olympic title. We're looking for the World Cup. Paul, what are we saying?
I think we'll see in terms of how long it takes to find out where he's going next. Because if it's like within the next week, nothing can be sorted that quickly. If it's a bit longer, then, he could be out kind of looking for something. So it'll be interesting. But he's had a massive, massive role in that Chelsea team and their success. You can see it just from the players. Sam Kerr, Lauren James, Aggie Beaver-Jones, all posting on their Instagram and thanking him for everything he's done. He's that kind of behind the scenes, silent partner, if you like, but very much Emma Hayes' right-hand man through that 10-year period of turning Chelsea into the machine that they are today. So it's a huge loss. It'll be interesting to see if he goes to another club or if he's maybe not allowed to go to another club. I don't know what would have been in the stipulations might be. Maybe he will go to international football. I don't know. But definitely a big loss. And it's one of those watch this space type things. Could it be a sign of something more concerning behind the scenes at Chelsea? Or could it just be a natural kind of progression and move on?
I think it's hard, when someone's been at a club for 13 years, they've obviously been a massive part of someone's dynasty, like Emma Hayes' reign there. Obviously Sonia's come in, she's got her own ideals of how she wants things to run and kind of, what she wants to, the direction that she wants to take the club essentially for, at least the next four years or so. And I think, it'd be interesting to see sort of how Paul fit into that, or whether there was just sort of a difference in values in a really that just happens type of way. But I think sometimes you just get not bored of it, but bored of the same, I don't know, club ethos, wanting to get a different challenge, wanting to go, maybe international and kind of try a different system, a different setup, a different type of players. So, I think, wish him the best of luck. He's obviously done a massive thing at Chelsea, and a massive congratulations should be given to his career. He's, done quite a lot of stuff at Chelsea. So, credit to him. Coming up after this, we have a proper relegation battle on our hands. Oh, this was a very interesting game. And I have to admit, early doors, I wasn't expecting to say that. So I turned up to Chigwell Construction Stadium. I was on co-coms. I have the absolute delight of bumping into Rach, who is the match manager of the day. I'm sitting there in my little press box, kind of wondering where the rest of the team are. It's getting to 20 minutes before the game. I'm starting to have a panic. Rach is coming along Chloe, who are you with? And I was like, oh, I'm supposed to be doing co-coms. She was like, oh no, and Port's literally to the other side of the stadium. There's a massive, I don't know if anyone's been to the Chigwell Construction Stadium, there is a huge bit of scaffolding that's erected really shakily on top of a very kind of a corrugated iron stand.
Big
looks
like
it would blow away if you sneezed type vibes. And Rachel's like, no, you've got to get on top of that. It's 20, 30 feet in the air. And I'm thinking, fuck. So make my way over there with about 2 minutes to spare to start the co-coms, and sat down to what was actually a pretty fucking enjoyable game. West Ham produced an amazing comeback from 2-0 down against Brighton to win 3-2. I've got to say, I mean, this is one of these results, Rachel. We keep talking about West Ham and how actually they what they do is quite impressive on the field, but they never come away with the result. They're always kind of like, you see really positive signs in West Ham, but the result kind of overtakes like anything they've actually done that's positive on the pitch. This kind of felt like a bit of a validating moment for West Ham because what they did was absolutely amazing. I think I was really impressed by like the defensive structure. They had 3 at the back, but it really felt like a solid block of 5. As soon as Brighton won the ball, they were kind of quite happy for Brighton to kind of like set up camp in the middle of the pitch. They weren't allowing them any routes through. It felt like Brighton were getting stuck. As soon as they hit midfield, it'd come out from the back. As soon as they hit the defence, there was a couple of passes along the back line, and then they kind of really struggled to kind of make any kind of leeway into West Ham's final third. And that was because West Ham had set up so solidly, which I absolutely rated. And then they had a couple of really, really good chances. You know, Viviane Asseyi looked amazing. They had the Shakira Martinez chance where there was a gorgeous little cutback. Shakira Martinez on the line. I don't know whether the ball just like bounced awkwardly. It kind of hit her shin. The ball came underneath her. And I thought, is this just going to be a sign of like one of those games where West Ham are doing the right things and not converting their chances? And then you've got Kiko Seike's goal.
That came out of nowhere.
I was just like...
Nadozie to defender lobbed it forward, which, do you know what, actually, for a team like Brighton who so love to play out from the back, even when they're being hammered, and I have to say, West Ham are really intense, really aggressive, pressing high, you know, you don't often see that from a West Ham start. I thought they started super well. They just went over the top, and it worked. Kiko Seike took it down and lobbed the keeper from, 30 yards out, and to be fair, I can kind of understand why Shemek didn't expect it, because I don't think anyone expected it. You know, like, I know you were doing comms and Sonny was about, oh, it's a goal. Like, so yeah, I do feel like Brighton's goals kind of came out of nowhere a little bit against the run of play.
Completely against the run of play, yeah.
Yeah, and, you know, despite having less possession, I just thought West Ham, the way they'd set up, as you said, really kind of forced Brighton into kind of silly mistakes, or a little bit sloppy in possession. They were off. They weren't on their day. They weren't playing like they did against London City Lionesses. Yet they lost that game against London City. And I thought, you know, I'm glad you elevated me to match manager. I was floor manager, which is slightly different, but I was prepping my questions for post-match from about like 60, 70 minutes. I'm starting to think what I'm going to ask the managers and the players. And, you know, I was going to ask Chris Roberts about the fact that, you know, last week played great, all over them, didn't win. This week, not so great, won the match. You know, WTF kind of. I wouldn't have said that, but you get the drift. And then like West Ham, and I'm so glad you picked Asseyi for player of the match, because she was wearing the captain's armband on the day, and she just encapsulated the kind of energy and fight that West Ham had maybe lacked a little bit. And there were moments where, like, there was a moment right in front of me, because on pitch side, you know, Shakira Martinez kind of lost possession, dropped her shoulders, stopped running, frustrated. Asseyi, absolutely not. Chased down the defender with the ball, like, had that passion, that drive, lifts the team, chases down everything. Deservedly ended up being the player who got the winning goal in injury time. Like, they scored all 3 goals in 10 minutes from between the 81st and 91st minute. Absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, that energy was really good to see. And I think a West Ham of old who played well but didn't get the goals would have dropped their heads a little bit. And I just think that was a really good sign for West Ham. And I've never been in the tunnel before a West Ham game before, and I was this time. And I don't know if this is something that Rita Guarino has brought in, or if it's something that West Ham have always done. Maybe a West Ham player can confirm or deny for us. But what I liked was that all of the staff line the corridor. So the tunnel's kind of like a T, and then they go out the tunnel. So down their side, all the staff are standing against the wall, because we're at that point now where the players are starting to come out, the subs are going up to the bench, etc., etc. And every single time a player came out of the changing room, everyone started going, big claps, big whoops, come on, let's go, and high five every single staff member as they walked out and went down. And then as the players lined up, every single player, there was so much noise and hype in the tunnel. I was like looking across to Brighton, who were just kind of like normally walking out, other side of the tunnel, come on, let's go, high five. So I'd love to know if that's something that's been brought in, or whether it's something that they've always done. But they definitely, a lot of the players just felt hyped going out onto the pitch. And you could see that they were really fighting for each other right to the end.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I mean, a big part of that was the fans as well. They did fall a little bit flat when the game naturally got a little bit flatter around the sort of 50, 60, 70 minutes. But also I've got to give a big shout out to Fionn Morgan as well. Came in and around the 70th minute, drives down the wing. And then just again, it kind of felt like every single goal was against the run of play. Like when Brighton kind of, seemed like they were on the front foot a little bit more dominant, West Ham would score. And when West Ham were on the front foot, Brighton would score. And I could not keep up. But this Fionn Morgan goal, it was like one of those like fluky kind of like crosses into the box, a little bit probing, and then Dozie kind of gets a hand to it, but it kind of, I think the pace of it maybe just sort of takes her backwards, or she's a little bit sort of unsettled on her feet, takes it backwards and it's in. And I think that goal really kind of triggered this kind of, I don't know, the feeling of belief and hope that West Ham might actually get something out of the game.
The crowd changed.
I mean, even Fionn, 100% the mentality around it. And I've got to say, I mean, the Brighton fans really brought a lot of energy. They had a woman dressed up as a seagull,
always there.
A great costume, but there was a really good, like, strong Brighton contingent that kind of made a lot of noise. So it kind of felt a little bit on occasion like it was. Yeah,
they put on transport
it's crazy.
For them. It's great.
It felt like Brighton's ground, but I think what I really want to take away from this is like, yes, 100% West Ham have got some much needed points, but I think it was like they can do it when the confidence is there and that belief is there, that they have to fight until the final minutes. Like it might not come, it might not be the prettiest game, they might not get everything right, but there were so many positives that I saw in that game. Yes, Asseyi, Shakira Martinez was amazing. I just think there's a lot of positives I think they can build on with that. And I think I'm hoping that it's just like the confidence and like even at the end, they had kind of one of the staff members kind of like doing a little dance in the circle afterwards. And there was all like it felt like they kind of won a cup. It was like that kind of mentality. And I really rated it.
Rita Guarino went through every single emotion on that touchline. She was fascinating to watch. And she's Italian, so she's given it socks. And just watching her go through the frustration of going 2-0 down when they're playing well, to getting one back, to getting another one back, to getting ahead. Like it was, I really enjoy being pitch side as floor manager because you get to see so much. You could see it from the stands if you wanted, but you just get to see the passion from the managers and how they live through like every kick of the ball sometimes.
Yeah, it was brilliant. I'm going to go down to the Chigwell Construction Stadium again because I really just hope they continue this kind of run of form and this starts like a positive momentum towards the end of the season as they're fighting in this very long, very spicy relegation battle. Talking of which, Liverpool's position obviously has improved. They are piling the pressure on West Ham. They picked up another big and very convincing win against Aston Villa, 4-1 to move off the bottom spot for the very first time in a very long time. We were trying to figure out before the pod when Liverpool weren't at the bottom of the table this season, and I think we just came to the conclusion that it was the first week, and that's only because they aren't alphabetically going to be at the bottom of the table. So congratulations to them. They've now scored 9 goals in their last 5 WSL matches. So yeah, a lot of positive things happening. It kind of feels like there's a few teams here that are kind of gathering momentum. Yes, haven't had the greatest start to the season, but are finding some confidence and kind of getting a bit more of a foothold. So yeah, really, really lovely to see. And then Everton won their first game under interim head coach Scott Phelan, a 1-0 win away at London City Lionesses. This, of course, came after they'd announced the sacking of Brian Sorensen last week, ended almost 4 years on Merseyside. Rach, what did you kind of make of the news? Because I'm just not a fan of January sackings, and especially where you've got a club that isn't fully investing as much as you want to in their side. I just think it's a hands behind your back type situation every time. I'm
surprised and I'm not. Like, I feel like I like you, I don't like the sacking so quickly. I know some fans are calling for it, and again, I think without the context it's pretty unfair. I think they've gone through a lot, Everton, over the number of years that Brian has been there, and he's been building a lot both on the pitch and behind the scenes as well. But when the WSL, like we've been following it for a number of years, when a manager is in a situation where a club might go, right, pull the plug, because that way it looks like we're doing something. And it's been interesting watching some of the mental gymnastics that some Everton fans have been doing online, where they won that game against London City and we're like, see, you could just see we're so much better than we were under Brian, and everything's different, and we're attacking and we're this and we're that. And I'm like, your goalkeeper got player of the match. Like, let's not pretend like you were playing some really super attacking football. I thought they kind of had a similar defiance in a way that they did against Chelsea a little bit, where they were just making life difficult for London City, but equally Courtney Brosnan again was unreal. So I think a bit more time for Scott to see how he's able to change things, because a number of the backroom staff went as well, which must be quite disruptive, I think, for a team. But I feel like this Everton team are, as a unit, as players, we've heard it from Aurora, from Yaya, they're a very kind of cohesive group that really fight for each other and back each other. And, that will probably help them ride out this kind of tricky time.
Well, as you said there, Rach, obviously the news came just 3 days after Everton got their first home victory of the season against Villa. So the club's chief executive, Angus Kinnear, says Sunday's first win of the season at Goodison Park was important, but it has become evident that a change of direction is necessary to ensure the progression on the pitch we are all striving for. So
yeah, you don't have another manager lined up. So, you want a change of direction, but that change of direction is just going to be somewhat rudderless for a little while we get a new manager. Just the timing was weird. Could have done it at the international window. I don't know. It was unexpected in that respect. I didn't expect it then. And personally, I always had time for Brian Sorensen as a manager. And he was always very chatty and gave a lot when you interviewed him one-on-one, maybe less so on press conferences, because he would often just be spending time telling you how many players were injured in his squad. So yeah, I'm sad to see him go, because I thought he was a nice guy.
Also, when you have the post-match conferences and you're kind of speaking to managers who actually give you something and kind of tell them a little bit, tell you a little bit about what they've been thinking in this particular moment or what's actually been happening. There's some truth and honesty in what they're saying, and it's not just media trained fluff. You always kind of you miss the managers who give you something of real value.
100%. And I was going to say, managers that are willing to speak on stuff when things happen in the game, and you can at a press conference ask them about it, and they're willing to they've thought about the situation and it's something they care about. And Emma Hayes was one of the greats. I think Rianne Skinner is very good at it. Carla Ward was very good at it. Jonas Eideveld too. A number of managers who are willing to and Robert Villaham, they're prepared and prepped for those kind of conversations, because they know something like that is important to the overall growth of the game, and that they should have an opinion on it. And I really rate managers that are willing to do that.
Oh mate, well, another manager fallen to the manager merry-go-round of the WSL. No one's safe, even those that have signed contracts to 2030. So be careful, Sonia. Thoughts and prayers. Thank you for listening to Upfront. Rach, where are you headed for this week's Champions League games? I am off to Belgium and then to Madrid. So doing both the Man United and Arsenal games this week. Love that, mate. I wish you all the safest of travels. Thank you. Yeah, I can't wait to catch up with you next week. I'm just going to go check on the cats because I think they're killing each other. And Sophie's on another presser. Christ. Oh my God. They're all right. There's just fluff everywhere. Oh, Christ. What do you pair? Give it a fucking rest. Have you been beating them up again? Not cool, man. Not cool. You're licking your lips with all the fur in your mouth. Oh, Christ. Stay in the place. This guy. Absolute pest and weapon. I mean, butter beats up his other brother. Honest to God, batters the crap out of him. Look at you, you big hairy arse on you. Huh?